Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Lighting the Candle, A World That Works. Today, I'm Bill Carell, and I'm here with my very dear friend, Shelley. And we're in conversation with each other. So you're going to hear a dialogue as opposed to a panel. We have a very short time frame to record this, and I just want to bring you up to speed on a couple of things. To remind you again, we're here to create empowerment in your listening. We want you to be able to be free to live your life and make every day the best day ever. And quite frankly, it's up to you if you're going to have the best day ever. It comes from a decision. And what I'd like to talk about, since we have 8 minutes, Shelley, is anything you'd like to talk about.
Anything I would like to talk about?
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to just, and this could be from anywhere and from you, kind of spark something in people. Kind of like, what if?
Yeah.
Anything, what if? What if the pandemic didn't happen? What would it have looked like? Would have all this unrest happened anyway? How, you kind of think of that, and you don't really, just from a place of where we are, looking back, but also looking forward, kind of coming from a conversation prior, what if we treated each other equally? What does that look like? And in your own mind, what does that, like, what stops you? What would stop you from having that be so?
Well, I used to have an Indian economics professor in college, and he would say, in order to accomplish something, you have to take into account what people say, what people do, and the value of what people say and what people do. And in many cases, are people free to make their mind up to just be in love with all the rest of the human race? Or is there some other thing that's at play within our culture and cultures worldwide that makes that either unpopular, dangerous, et cetera, et cetera? So, for example, it's so much fun. You can't get more than 2 or 3 sentences out before you start thinking about people behaving badly, And unfortunately, let's take what's a sensitive but non-sensitive topic that we can talk about. How about we just talk about social media for a second? Does that work for you?
That works.
Okay. So let's talk about, can we talk about canceling?
Canceling, sure.
Okay. So what we have is we have a mighty army of people that are paid to tweet and try to cancel other people. There's an army out there. And there are actually bots. And we talk about Russian bots all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
You think there aren't other bots on Twitter that give large volumes so that when you look at the analytics, the corporations go, oh my God, we're in trouble here?
Absolutely. That is part of what is happening. And they are, they're kind of in the forefront. It's not always just, 2 million followers. It's maybe 800,000 followers and 1.2 million bots, right? So there's this creative thinking in the social media world as well.
Yes.
But it is as well, it gives it power.
Yes.
Because we don't see that. What we don't see is sometimes irrelevant in the world in front of us.
Yes.
And not irrelevant, I shouldn't say irrelevant, is not part of our conscious decision making.
The conversation has to come from somewhere else to get our attention first, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So and an awareness. As we have spoken about before, it's about being aware.
Yes.
I made a conscious decision. I got rid of cable.
Yeah.
I don't want it. It's distracting, and the pandemic just surged that even more.
Yeah.
To me. It was gone before the pandemic, but when that hit, I was very glad. And then I started watching the news, and now I know why I got rid of my cable. Because I couldn't be productive. It was overwhelming. There was too many channels, and I could not decipher for myself what was real and what was not for me. And that's what's happening with social media. I've always told, the pandemic, and I deal with clients, they're like, oh my God, one person saying one thing, then another channel saying another. I said, pick one source. Pick one source and you listen to it. And if it resonates with you and it's making sense and they're doing, then stay with that one source.
Yeah.
You can check in to make sure that you're feeling okay about the source, but don't take 20 sources and trying to make something out of it, because it is just jumble. And that's in my world, that's what social media kind of does to people, is just bombardment. It's good, right there. It has its good part.
Everything does.
Right. But for me, it was the scales were being tipped way too much to the other side.
It's like wine. Okay.
Yeah.
Wine
Exactly.
is very healthful and has many benefits for you up to a point. And then beyond that,
tipped it.
So how much more time do we have here?
3 minutes.
Why don't we take this time and let's make up some topics for future podcasts. Okay.
Okay.
I would like to, dive into the deep end of the pool at some point and have a conversation about what the narratives are around the police, what the narratives are around people of color, what the narratives are around just generally, why are people so gung-ho to come to the United States any way they possibly can, and sending their children on, with strangers who, need money and stuff. So when we're talking about a world that works, we can talk about it in the passive sense as we have for about 46 episodes, or we can now start looking at people's behavior and try to understand, what are they thinking? What's the motivation? How does that sound to you?
I think if we come from a place of not necessarily questioning their behavior, but why is it that this is working, or why is it that they have to behave that way in order to get what they want? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying let's see if we can stand in their shoes for a little while.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Understand what their motivations are. I personally believe that all people are good. Okay, they all start out with being good, coming into the world. Mm-hmm. Something along the way, choices that they make, the people that they're around, and those sort of things. And I think it's worth analyzing and spending a little bit of time trying to understand.
Absolutely. Environment, circumstances, once you're aware of those, you now have potentially choices, right? That has not changed for any of us. Sometimes you're not given choices.
Exactly. There's always this survival aspect to anything that, when people do things that are not a natural action, and it actually causes them pain or suffering while they're taking an action, it's usually out of a survival instinct.
Right.
So, well, anyhow, Shelley, any closing thoughts that you've got?
No, it's just always very nice to have dialogue with you. This is sometimes coming into it, I'm not in the frame of mind, but after and moving through and having conversation, I'm always in a better place. And I think to also kind of stress that with all of you, hey, sometimes we're not in the mood. We're just in a bad place, and having a conversation with someone can really change that.
Absolutely. And I actually was in that very space for the last 3 weeks. I was not fit for human consumption, and therefore I chose not to subject anybody to my blatherings were. So I really want to thank you, and I want to thank you folks at home for listening to this. It's brief, and at the same time, we will do some more podcasts to kind of fill in and maybe get a little bit out ahead again. So with that said, I love all of you. I just haven't met you yet. No?
That's awesome. I love it.
All right, Shelley.
Have a great.
You too. And thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me again. Bye.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.